What's Miami's record going to be this year? Let's just go Miami. Full prediction here, full breakdown. Here's what I think you need to know. Their over-under win total at FanDuel, 9.5. Fairly lofty. They went from 5 wins to 7 wins. Now they got to win 10 games just to hit the over. They've got the third best odds to win the ACC. They are plus 210 to make the college football playoff. Over at FanDuel, you can just bet yes or no. Will they make the playoff? A yes returns at plus 210. They are 15th in the odds to win it all right now. Basically, it's payoff time. This is Mario's third year there. It's payoff time. Everyone's heard about the recruiting. Everyone's heard about the portal guys they added, and there are a lot of them. That just means 2024 is payoff time. And every time I've been down there, every time I've spoken to that staff over the past 2 seasons, 2024 was always the year. I didn't always share that because it made it sound like you would think they were mailing in the prior years. They weren't mailing them in, but they knew, just like any new staff does, we got a year we're circling where we think that's where we can take off. 2024 has been that year for Miami. Since the day they walked in, 2024 has been the year. So here's what I think I know about Miami. I think I know they could have the best quarterback in the ACC. They could have the best pass rush in the ACC. I can make solid arguments for offensive line, but there are several aspects of this team that could be the best in their conference, and they're sitting there with the third best odds to win it. And I think some people just have written the book on Miami. They'll choke in big games. Miami will never be back. They got no home field advantage, which I'll get to in a second. Well, that's the past. Sometimes the past is an indicator of the future, and sometimes the past is just the past, and they're about to write a brand new book. They have every ability to do that this year. From a personnel standpoint, from a staff standpoint, there's nothing standing in their way except for themselves. Another thing I think I know is they were overly aggressive in targeting 2024. The reasons I just mentioned, but also they knew when they landed Cam Ward at quarterback, it was game on. And they point blank looked around and said, if we got Ward at quarterback, we are not going to tiptoe around this thing. We are going to completely take a wrecking ball to the portal. We're going to go all in on NIL, and they got Damian Martinez, the running back out of Oregon State. They got Sam Brown in there. Tyler Barron looks like an animal. They got a bunch of guys, Simeon Barrow at defensive line, a bunch of guys that'll start this year that should be impact players for them. Not to mention you got those first 2 recruiting classes stacked on top of each other now. The Reuben Baines of the world, for example, just wandering around. And so you watch them, you go watch them practice, you watch them week 1 against Florida. They should look like a college football playoff team. Physically, that's what they should look like because that's what they are physically. But then guess what they got to do? They got to execute. Where have we heard that before? Here's what I need to know. I need to know how good the pass defense can be. They lost both safeties. They were only 55th versus the pass last year. So they lose 2 guys on the back end. Got some transfers they brought in. That could be an Achilles heel that has bared watching since spring. Doesn't have to be a weakness, but it is something that I'll be watching early on with them. Also, mentioned the home field advantage a second ago. This used to not be an issue. When the Orange Bowl, God rest her soul, was still around, Miami at home was no joke. It also had a lot to do with the quality of teams they've had. Well, lately, their teams hadn't been good, and their home field advantage has been non-existent. So, there is a data point out there. It's late 20-teens, can't remember the exact year. Notre Dame came in there. It was just crazy. They smoked Notre Dame, first off. Secondly, place was sold out. It was on fire. It was right up there with being as good as any home field advantage you're going to find in college football. It was like a total one-off. Notre Dame had a lot to do with that, but Miami folks showed up as well. And they showed you just a brief glimpse of what even Hard Rock Stadium could look like if the city was on fire for Miami football. So if Miami football is worth getting on fire for, how good can Hard Rock Stadium be as a home field advantage? Because all these other teams have it. Clemson, you get in there to play them at home, they've got a 12th guy on their side. FSU at Doak, they got a 12th guy on their side. Miami hadn't had that. So can they get that? Can they flip the big moments? The critical decision-making from a head coach, the critical turnover battle that they were on the minus side of last year. Can they be on the plus side of it this year? And then staying healthy and things like that. The coaching staff here, a lot of takes about the quality of coaching staff at Miami. So in our model here, we just use blind criteria, and we apply it the same way. It's a filter that we drag across all head coaches, all coordinators, and all assistants. This is a top 40 staff. More on that in a second. We've got a top 25 defensive coordinator here in Guidry, top 35 offensive support staff. I think they all stand to scale their rating, Mario included, both coordinators. I mean, Shannon Dawson, if he does big things with Cam Ward this year, then Shannon Dawson's rating, because there's a lot of recency bias, there's disproportionately heavy weight to the most recent, could scale up pretty quickly. But we can't use predictability in this. We can only go on what you've done. That's how that rating works. So it's a good staff. There's no glaring weakness, but there's also no elite in the model's eyes. So interested to see if that changes this year. Their schedule, they got the week 1 pressure cooker up in Gainesville. Miami's one of the only teams that says up in Gainesville when they refer to Florida. But they play 3 teams in the top 25 in the playoff odds. Not a murderer's row at all. They get Virginia Tech at home the 27th of September. That's a Friday night game, by the way. Where else would you want to be? Down in Miami, actually, a lot of people would claim that their social life's more important. Not us, though. College football is our social life in the fall. Get to the game if you're down there for that Virginia Tech game. There is only one team on this schedule you're looking at right now that is in the JP poll top 20, and that's Florida State, and they get them at home on October 26th. Notice they go to Louisville the week before, but they have a bye before that. Louisville is coming off 4 straight games. So 2 of their toughest games back-to-back there, but they got a bye in between, or they got a bye before Louisville, and Louisville is off 4 straight, so they got a little situational advantage there. You know, the best-case scenario for Miami this year is actually 12-0. When you look at how workable the schedule is, and you look at how relatively loaded the talent roster is, and they could have a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback, there's certainly a 12-0 in there. There's certainly an 8-4 in there as well. But here's what's wild. 8-4 being their worst case is an improvement record-wise over last year. I believe, Jesse, didn't they win 7 last year? So if the worst case is an improvement, those are really high standards. But I think it's warranted with this team. I got Miami going 11-1 this year. And you can make of that what you will, because that sends them to the ACC championship game probably. That may very well lock them into a playoff spot regardless of what happens in the ACC championship game. I got very high expectations for this team this year. I know they probably don't love hearing that down there because everyone wants you to trash them this time of year and keep them under the radar. JP Poll's got Miami at 18. That's where the JP Poll, the model, that's where it starts Miami. I think Miami will finish a lot higher than 18.